Hey there everybody, this is just Graham here, and welcome to a slightly different video than usual. With the new year, I wanted to shake things up a bit, so I figured why not talk about the games that are coming out in 2023 that I'm personally excited for. Before we start, I do want to set some rules for the list. No ongoing games are going to show up here. Old School RuneScape just announced a sequel to one of my favorite quests from that entire game, so you won't see that here. Same with Final Fantasy XIV. I'm very excited for whatever content they give us this year, but it doesn't really feel fair to put things like that on the list. Similarly, no early access games with 2023 planned releases that I've already featured on the channel. I love Phasmophobia to death. It's probably one of my favorite horror games. It's not going to be here. And also keep in mind that this list is going to be in no particular order. This is, for the most part, there's one exception, what I thought of in the order I thought of. So, let's get started. First is Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 1 was one of the first games that I ever played as a child. I remember years ago just trying to get my way through that thing, a game that is entirely too difficult for the age I was playing it at, and I was never very good at it. Similarly, I adore Baldur's Gate 2. I'm even worse at that one because it's the higher level content. Setting aside the fact that this is a continuation of one of my favorite game franchises, the devs, Larian, are actually one of my favorite game devs. Back in 2010, I picked up a copy of Divinity 2. It was a strange little action RPG from a dev I'd never heard of, and the world in the game and the writing was so good that despite how janky the original release of the game was, the devs become one of my favorites. So the fact that one of my favorite developers is tackling one of my favorite game genres means there's a lot to get excited for. Now I know technically I could play this one just about whenever, but I really want to wait till it gets fully released and they're happy with it before I give it a look. The next one is the Dead Space remake. Dead Space 1, the original release, was probably the first survival horror game I played. It was always a genre I knew about, but I don't think until then I'd ever actually played a game in the genre. It's not the scariest game. It relies a little too much on the jump scare horror for that, but it absolutely nails the atmosphere of being stuck in deep space on a broken ship with something that personally wants you dead. The combat as well, based around shooting off the enemy's limbs as opposed to shooting them in the head like any other zombie game, is something that's really stuck with me over the years. It's the one unique point that the game really has. So with that in mind, I'm really excited to see how this remake evolves the gameplay, if they change the gameplay at all, but also just the original, setting. I've seen some artwork with some actual, footage with parts of the ship, and it seems like they're really looking to improve the overall feeling and atmosphere, so I can't wait to see how they do that. Next one's cheating a little bit, to be perfectly honest. Hades 2. It isn't exactly confirmed for a 2023 release, but it is at least going into early access with a beta test, so I'm counting it. Might as well, right? The original Hades is one of my favorite roguelikes. It's probably one of the best I've ever played. The fast-paced and energetic combat is incredibly addicting, but it also serves as the driving force in this very emotional story about a son and his estranged father, through this repeated attempts and runs that you normally get with a roguelike, really breaking down each other's walls and managing to finally connect. Supergiant always does stuff like this. Their games are an absolute joy to play because of the thought that they put into blending gameplay and story. And also, this is, I believe, the first sequel that the developer has ever done. I'm excited to see what they were so passionate about that they decided to actually make a sequel. That's why this is on this list. Next is Deathmark 2. The original Deathmark came out in 2017, but I just played it for the first time earlier this year. Normally, I'm not the biggest fan of visual novel style games, aside from maybe Doki Doki Literature Club, but I wouldn't exactly call myself a fan of the gameplay more than just I enjoyed the experience. this game is an exception. It's got a mix of really likable characters, the protagonist especially, who is canonically might as well be a kleptomaniac. Everybody comments on him just shoving random things into his pockets, and I love it. The game also has a lot of really solid mysteries, and this just oppressive atmosphere. The whole mix is really captivating. Chapter 5 is by far my favorite in the game. It is so haunting, and in my opinion practically justifies the existence of the game by itself. If you've played the game, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but if not, well, it's probably some of the best use of 80-year-old music that I have ever seen. So, I haven't yet played the sequel to the game. There was a sequel in 2018 called Spirit Hunter NG. I haven't played it yet. I will be playing it at some point in the future, and I cannot wait to see where the next game takes these characters. Before we get to the game that I am most excited for this year, I do want to give an honorable mention to I'm on Observation Duty 6. Now, there's no confirmation that this one's coming out this year, but the dev really likes to sneak these out about every 7 months or so, and I think the last time I played 5 was about 7 or 8 months ago, so I'm sure it's going to come out just about any second, and yeah, you already know I'm going to be there playing the game as soon as it comes out. Still getting absolutely ruined by anomalies that I won't notice because I'm practically blind. There's this spot on the list for this one, pending it actually coming out this year. Now, the game I'm most excited for is the Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection. My first experience with the Battle Network games was back in 2003 with the third game in the series. They're a hugely nostalgic part of my childhood. It was just this franchise that I would get the new game every year, and I loved them. I played them all to death, except for the first one. I think that's the only one I haven't played too much of. For those of you who aren't familiar, they are a hybrid trading card game and action game set in a turn-of-the-millennia version of the Mega Man universe. So, Mega Man takes place in 20XX. This is closer to 2000X, but they had a better idea of what things would look like at the time. If you're a fan of TCG games like Magic or Hearthstone, what you'll find is a system with a lot of different strategies that you can employ, and it changes each game. It feels very distinct from the pillars of the genre. But if you're not really super familiar with those games, they also do a really good job of teaching you how to play. Not so much on the deck building part, but you pick that up as you play. As far as the game itself, they're very accessible to newcomers because they do a good job of tutorializing their game. There's also a ton of post-game content in just about every game. 3 especially has, I want to say, maybe about half as much content in the post-game as there is in the main game. Like, there's just so much to do. So many extra bosses, so many new areas, new enemies. They will keep you busy for a long time if you try to go for full completion. Of course, you know I will be playing all of those series when they come out later this year. I don't know which versions, because each one also came with 2 versions of the game. So that'll be fun to try to figure out which ones of those I want to play. Anyway, that wraps up this short list of games that I'm excited about in the coming year. But I want to know, which games are you excited about? What games did I miss? I know I definitely did not cover every game that is slated to come out this year, and I'm sure that I've missed some that people are really looking forward to, and maybe even some I'm looking forward to myself and just forgot about. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments, just letting me know what you're excited for personally. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for joining me. Happy 2023, everybody. I'll catch you in the next one.